One of the neat things about being part of a news organization is working with talented journalists who actually cover these issues. And so before we turn the conversation back over to the audience, I'm going to ask my colleague, Marcus Schmidt, who's been covering this issue, to come up and provide a brief overview about where this issue is and where it might be headed. Marcus? You might have seen Marcus. He was with the public square on the Kennedy assassination and Larry Sabato, and his job was trying to get a word in edgewise, and he did a good job of it. He did one job. So Marcus, take us through an overview of what the issue is all about.
I'm a politics reporter for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I cover the Virginia State Legislature, and I also cover the delegation. And on top of that, I have a focus on constitutional law, so it's no surprise that same-sex marriage has been on my radar since last year when it appeared before the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. Supreme Court did not do away or did not declare same-sex marriage unconstitutional, but it struck a part of the Defense of Marriage Act, which in essence means that same-sex marriage is now recognized by the federal government. But they haven't been exactly clear on how states handle it with this issue. So we still have the 2006 ban of same-sex marriage in effect here in Virginia. And I'm saying it's a ban because even though it has always been illegal for gay couples to get married in Virginia. However, the ban or the constitutional amendment, which was backed by 2 legislative sessions and 57% of voters, what this ban does, it makes clear that in Virginia, marriage can only be between a man and a woman. So the delegates at that time and senators at that time, they understood that at some point, probably because of the change in a cultural shift, there could be laws brought forward or legislation put forward in the General Assembly that would legalize same-sex marriage. To prevent that, we have now an amendment to the Constitution. Now, this amendment has been subjected to a lot of controversy over the last, it's been 8 years now, but the Supreme Court decision to strike down parts of DOMA really brought a lot more dynamics to it. So what we're seeing now is a lot of same-sex couples in Virginia, but also in other states, trying to overturn state bans on this issue. And the latest case, you might have read the paper today, I covered the Bostic v. Rainey hearing in Norfolk. This is Tim Bostic and Tony London. They're a couple who have been together for almost 30 years, 25 years, I believe. And they're challenging the ban based on the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, Equal Protection Clause. Now, the way they're doing this is initially it was just a suit, but in January last month, the newly elected Attorney General, Mark Herring, issued his opinion that the ban is unconstitutional. This has sparked quite a controversy statewide, actually nationwide. We've heard some discussion about it, simply because an Attorney General, and that is usually the position, is supposed to defend Virginia law in a federal court. Mark Herring is not going to do that, but he's entitled to not do it because he also says that under the U.S. Constitution, he believes it's unconstitutional. So there's a provision in the state code, 2.2, which allows the Attorney General to not defend Virginia law if he believes it's unconstitutional under United States law. And that's what Mr. Herring is doing. We will see more of this happening. The hearing was yesterday, and it's pretty certain that this issue will come up before the Fourth Circuit Court, federal court, and then the United States Supreme Court, probably not before 2015. Of course, we're going to keep on following it. It's a very big issue in Virginia. Both sides on the aisle are very much motivated about it, so we're going to keep an eye on it.
Marcus, easy story to cover, difficult story to cover?
It's difficult because both sides tend to accuse you of being partial. So it's very difficult to always represent both sides. And because it's such an emotional issue, they tend to get very riled up about it on both sides of the aisle. So we try our best to present both sides equally, and I hope we can do that.
Okay. So since there's this is an issue where there are 2 sides and maybe a side that's undecided, we did this on the first one on the ballpark. Who's got a coin? I apparently do not have any change today. Did I? I'm sorry, I apologize. So what I'm going to do is the format. Thank you. I got a nickel this time. I got a quarter at the first meeting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip a coin. Heads are people who are in favor of rescinding the ban on single sex. Con is no, keep the ban in place. We'll use the format of for and against, and we'll ask if there's anybody undecided. In the first program, we had a couple of people who were undecided, and they asked pretty good questions as to why they were, and it was actually one person who moved from undecided to taking a side because of the conversation. So we'll flip it in the air. What is that? Tails? Tails will go first. That means people who continue to favor the ban on same-sex will go first, and then we'll alternate. So we'll go from there. Let me grab a mic. Hang with us, Marcus, in case something comes up. This is how the square is. We try to limit conversation to 3 to 5 minutes. My advice always is make one great point, because there are other people waiting to make the other points. And if we have time and we run out of speakers, we can always come back to you. Who wants to start? Okay, Marcus, you got another 50 minutes? Okay, who wants to start? In the back, okay. And as always, identify yourself. And
From Richmond. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that it's unfair to gays that they can't marry just like men and women can marry. It was also unfair to me that I couldn't fly an airplane because I can't see well enough. I think the bigger question is what's in the best interest of the society. And there are 3 predictable outcomes if we have same-sex marriage. One of them is that there will be no reasonable answer to why don't we just also have polygamy. The next is that my grandchildren, my granddaughters, when they go to school 10, 15 years from now, it will be required that the instructors, the books, the textbooks, have every opportunity for them to go marry another woman as they would a man. Would that be in the best interest of our society? I don't think so. And the third predictable outcome is that those who do have a conviction, either for a theological reason, for any other reason, that believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman, they will be considered as pariahs in the society. People who will be outcast, and even the societies that the organizations that they belong to will become outcast. Is that good for the society? I don't think so. The tactics that are used by the other side are often frightening. Those who believe, for whatever reason, that marriage should be between a man and woman would be automatically defined as someone who is a hater. And the tactics are often very brutal, in which there are organizations that will be set there to ruin not only their reputation, but also their businesses. Is that good for society? I don't think so.
And finally?
I think that we are on the verge of committing sexual suicide, and I think that we should be very cautious and with our eyes wide open of what we do before we do this.
All right, that's the opening round. Now we'll go to comments in favor of same-sex. My colleague Floyd Spencer is on the other side. In favor? In favor? Okay.
Hi, my name is Amanda, and I'm a proud bisexual woman of the LGBT community. I'd like to start on the point about polygamy. That is a whole new level all on its own. It's not necessarily whether it has anything to do with the gay or lesbian community as a whole. Another thing about it being taught in schools, well, I want to start off by saying that I have 2 children I've been raising for the last 4 years with another woman. And when I had them both by in vitro fertilization. And as far as I know, they're fine. They go to preschool, and everybody knows that they have 2 mommies, and nobody judges them. You know, I feel like now in the 21st century, we've become a long way. Like it used to be women couldn't vote, but now we can. black people couldn't do anything, but now they can. So why is it now okay to try and take the same right away from gays and lesbians just to get married? I mean, if you look at it, the divorce rate among straight couples is astounding, absolutely astounding. And most people, think that it would have some kind of effect on the sanctity of marriage. Well, what kind of effect is it having when every time you turn around, somebody's getting divorced? The gay and lesbians of the community that want to get married have probably been together for years and years, just like he spoke about the couple that have been together for 25 or 30 years. It's been a while since I've seen someone of the heterosexual community that has stayed together that long with somebody and stayed married to them and faithful. So another thing I've also heard, it's mostly come from the religious aspect is what I hear the most of. And
we're trying to get one major point, so can you wrap up?
yes, I sure can.
You're doing well.
But as far as, like me, obviously I'm bisexual, so I could go either way, but I am a strong advocate for the LGBT community, and I feel that it is their right, just like it is anyone else's, to be able to get married.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody undecided on the issue that's kind of, okay, good, because we had a number on the ballpark issue. Undecided meaning you're trying to figure it out, or why are you undecided?
Well, my name is Walt Pulliam, and I'm from Henrico. And I'm undecided because I feel strongly both ways. My wife and I, and she's a lady, have been married 47 years, but we got married in a civic ceremony by Justice of the Peace. And so I've come to the position that there is a way of recognizing the perspective of both. And I would advocate for competent, consenting adults who wish to form a civil union be allowed to do that. And those who wish to have it endorsed in a religious way through marriage would be able to do that subject to the requirements of the particular faith.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for pointing it out. We'll go to back. We have had three different viewpoints. Now we're back to against same-sex, for the ban, the constitutional amendment ban. Sorry, people pointing. Yes, sir. You're on. There's about a 2-second delay on the microphone.
I'm Reverend Rick McDaniel, and from Henrico. And so obviously I'm speaking from a religious viewpoint, but I do think that I have a viewpoint that's larger than just religious. Marriage is a public structure. It is not simply a self-oriented romantic partnership. It's much more than that. And because it's a public structure, it impacts the well-being of society, and it particularly impacts the well-being of children. So marriage, having an opportunity for a child to have, and the word is opportunity, to have both a father and a mother, both a male and female influence, I think is crucial. It is very unfortunate, as this young lady said, that there are so many divorces. That is, but two wrongs never make a right. I've been married for 30 years, so it can be done. But I'm a pastor, and I certainly know that many people struggle with their marriages. But marriage needs to get strengthened the way it is. It doesn't need any kind of redefinition for it to become different than it is today. And I'm concerned as a pastor about the implications for marriage if it is redefined. Will I, as a pastor, be required to marry people that I could never do in good conscience? Will I be required to allow my church to be rented out for ceremonies in ways that I could never support as a pastor? Already people who are caterers, and they've had suits against them because they won't participate in helping with a gay marriage ceremony. So it's concerning, but I'm mostly concerned about children. I think that when you start revising marriage, you take away a lot of great opportunities that children would have. Certainly divorce, death of a spouse, single parenting. I have many single parents in my church. I understand that. But that's not the optimal way for a child to be raised. I have raised 2 sons. I would be very concerned for them if they were only raised by me or if they were only raised by my wife. So marriage as a public structure needs to be supported. Civil unions, yes, people who are gay should not be losing any of their rights. They should have the right to all the benefits that come in a relationship. But marriage, as it is defined as a public structure, should be supported.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sir. For same-sex against ban.
My name is Robin Gorsline, Reverend Robin Gorsline. I, too, am a pastor. A couple of things I think that I want to, I'm also president of an organization, statewide organization called People of Faith for Equality in Virginia. So a couple points I want to make from the faith perspective. The first one I suspect is I want to say something about children, and that is we too care about the children, and there are lots of children of same gender loving couples who are not having the benefit of having 2 legal parents. So something happens to one of those parents, that child has some other issues and problems to go forth. We also have a foster care and adoption system that is vastly overloaded in Virginia, and Virginia's, partly because of the ban, Virginia has some policies that make it hard for lesbian and gay couples to actually bring children into their home who need a home with 2 adults. The third thing to say, so that's about children. I think children, we have to think about all the children and the children who need support with existing families. In terms of the religious ban, it is a well-established provision of law that no clergy person is going to be told who they may or may not marry. They have the right always, based on their religious tenets, and certainly based on the fact that whether they think the people are qualified to be married, you can say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to marry you, and the state will not force that issue, and that would be true with ban were eliminated. The third thing is about what is marriage, and to me this is the fundamental issue, and I'm glad the pastor raised it as well, because it is a very important point. For me and for other clergy I know, and for much of the movement for marriage equality, this is not simply described as a romantic attachment. It is that, of course. But we believe that the connections come from God. And so for the Commonwealth of Virginia to say, well, no, we think some of these relationships are better than others, is to deny the fact that people are brought together by a divine or some force that's outside themselves. So frankly, the state has a role to grant privileges in the society, but the state doesn't actually marry people. God marries people, and we'd like all those marriages recognized and upheld by the Commonwealth of Virginia and the citizens of Virginia.
Okay, good. Off to a good start on the back and forth. Any other undecided on this issue that want to share questions? Amazing. Only one undecided. Congratulations. The only undecided one on this. You might even get a unique in tomorrow's paper. All right, we'll go to, well, you're on, what side are you on? Okay, so we're for, the next one is, I know, okay, Con. Help me out here. Con, against same-sex. I know, yeah, against same-sex. Against same-sex. What it gets me is same-sex and the ban. So let's just, for my purposes, and there's no political leaning either way, for same-sex, against same-sex marriage. So against, so that's where we are. Okay, thank you, sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Blake, Henrico County. And I'd like to ask a question here and share a few thoughts. I hold in my hand a Bible. This Bible is over 4,000 years old. Moses was given the law, the moral law, by God in the book of Leviticus. And for 4,000 years, homosexuality has been an abomination, along with bestiality and other things that God says we should not do. It says in this Bible here. And my question to anybody who would like to respond is, when did society decide that homosexuality was no longer an immoral lifestyle? When did it happen? I would also like to address the newspaper on something. When Christians are referred to, and I think there are 2 types of Christians. There are Christians who actually believe in the Bible, and there are Christians who believe in parts of the Bible. Those who believe in parts of the Bible, I think, are the problem. Those who believe in the Bible have the solution, because this is what God said 4,000 years ago, and we have to, as Christians, live by that. The issue that I have with the Times-Dispatch is Christians are referred to as religious people. Muslims are never referred to as religious people. Hindus, Buddhists, other Wiccans are never referred to as religious people. But they're Christians. And so when the paper, when you're writing about this, refer to those who believe in this Bible as Christians. And if you want to further do that, you can say Christians who actually believe in the Bible, because there are two types of Christians. Those of you who can answer to me, when did homosexuality become a moral lifestyle? What happened in 1973 when the American Psychiatric Association said that homosexuality is no longer a mental disorder? Did it happen later when the Supreme Court started issuing things and taking God out of society? We as a society are rejecting this book, and we are slowly eradicating or erasing God, the God of the Bible, from our society. And so anybody who would like to answer the question about morality, I'll be glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I'm not an expert to address that, except I'm going to, and this has already been answered, I think, by a minister, but I will say this. We are a nation of laws and individual liberty, and some of us are not Christians, and we do not necessarily share the biblical beliefs, and nowhere is our Constitution. Surely everyone brings their own morality into government, but nowhere is our laws supposed to be dictated. We are supposed to have religious freedom. The Statute of Virginia, religious liberty, addresses this issue. And it is the liberty issue I wish to address. This is a bad law, not only because of the marriage factor, but I read the Constitution as written. It did not allow for the civil aspects of it, for the people to be able to say who inherits their wealth. Their partner can inherit their wealth. It should be examined, re-examined on the issues of civil liberty. And that's why my group, the Libertarians, fought it when it was originally put in. It is far more draconian than just dealing with the issue of marriage. This is a ban. And as far as these other religions, if they believe in polygamy, that should be examined too under our today's society. Because if you just want to use some simple math here, usually there are not the same amount of men and women, and that can go both ways. I mean, if two women want to share one man, I mean, that should be their option too. Or if two men want to share one woman, but it basically is how far does government come into our personal lives? And under the Constitution of the United States, if the Virginia Constitution has exceeded its authority, it needs to be examined, and the people of Virginia need a second chance at this question.
Okay, good. Next up, against same-sex marriage. Next comments? No more. Okay. In the back, okay. And we'll stay in this back and forth as long as we have comments from both sides. If not, when we exhaust that, we'll throw it open to the general audience.
Almost every day we hear about another scientist who has changed his mind as he has realized that the theory of evolution can't explain the observable facts of the universe and has now realized that only a great creator could be responsible. There is no other rational explanation for life and human consciousness. It seems that this creator made both man and woman, each with special and different functions and talents. Both are really necessary for the most successful family. Besides, I had something else I can't read.
Take your time.
Besides, who's going to change all the dictionaries?
Okay, that was Barbara Taggart. Thank you, Barbara. Okay, for same-sex marriage. Okay. He had his hand up slightly ahead of you.
Slightly ahead. I'm Rabbi Gary Creditor, and I'm proud to be part of the people who brought forth the Bible. That's historical truth. I would like to say two things. One is that there's lots of things in the Bible that are called abominations, which are not considered abominations, and we don't kill them. We don't put to death rebellious children. We don't put to death adulterers. We don't put to death people whom violate Sabbath, however you want to define Sabbath. So Judaism has an interpretive process to the biblical text. which accounts for the fact that society changes. And whatever society was in biblical times, and then in later times, it has changed to what it is today. So that the issue of biblical text needs to be seen in an interpretive process, which then allows us to hear God's voice in many different ways. I'd like also to cite a text which we used last week at the program, and that is there's a fundamental text that says we're all created in God's image. If God isn't physical, then what's the image? And I like to present the word holiness, that the biblical text imbues each one of us without regard to our individuality, namely whether we're man or woman, whatever religion we are, whatever ethnicity we are, whatever language we speak. The biblical text would hold each of us to be in God's image, no more and no less. And that thus each individual has a full measure of God's holiness within them, regardless of their gender or how they see gender, and thus are eligible and entitled to equal respect and protection under the law.
Okay. Mr. Blake, did you get your question answered?
I was just asking when, because as you can see, I've been around a long time, and you have too, sir, so you have too. When did society redefine homosexuality to make it a moral lifestyle? And when that happened, did it not change, like the libertarian said, I appreciate the things he said, that the polygamy can come about, marrying your sister, marrying your father, inheritance laws, all these things. God put these rules in Leviticus, and he said, thou shalt not. Does not have men and women and women, sisters and brothers, your father's mother, all these things, and that should not. And you, sir, know the Old Testament better than I do, I'm sure. But when did your faith, when did the Christian faith, when did those who believe in parts of the Bible, when did this change, other than 73 when they changed the diagnosis for mental illness? When did this change in society? Can you pick out a year or an incident? When did we as a people decide this is a moral lifestyle?
He's had your hand up, and I'll go to your quick thing.
My name is Herb Sieber, and I'm from Tappahannock. I'm also an attorney, and I wanted to bring a little legal perspective to this. First of all, if everyone would concede, I think the courts are in the process of deciding this now, but if marriage is in fact a fundamental right, just like freedom of speech, if it's a fundamental right, then it's a no-brainer that same-gender persons are being unjustly discriminated against, and that banning same-sex marriage is in fact unconstitutional, because everyone should have the same fundamental rights. And freedom of association, freedom of choice, individual liberty have all been bedrocks of Virginia rights since its origin. Everyone wants freedom to choose however they want to live, work, or play. But Virginia has been for many years in the past on the wrong side of so many issues. They were on the wrong side of integration, they were on the wrong side of mixed race marriage, on the wrong side of mixed drink laws, and now they're on the wrong side of this issue. There's a case in Caroline County some years ago, the Loving case, which the paper had an article about because one of those parties died not long ago, that the court finally recognized the rights of mixed races to marry. Now, in our society, our culture, or throughout history anyway, minorities have always been oppressed. But in this country, it has been a popular custom to root for the underdog. And it's obviously gays and lesbians and so on are certainly underdogs, and it's time for everyone to root for the underdog and get on the right side of this issue, and particularly the correct legal side. I predict that the Supreme Court will finally decide that it's unconstitutional to single out this one group and prevent them from marrying.
Okay, good, thank you. Against? Anybody for against? Back and forth. Against same-sex marriage? Okay.
My name is Matthew Davey, and I am a heterosexual male, and I happily voted for Mark Herring, and I'm excited to see all that he's doing. And really my question is why should your beliefs be my laws?
Okay. Since there's no dynamic back and forth, we'll now throw it open to the general audience and go by geography. We'll take one from one side, one from the middle, and one from the other side. Hopefully not matching up on anybody's political persuasion, but just keeping the conversation moving across the room. Floyd, you have somebody in the back? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vaughn Pritchett from Richmond, and I think if two people love each other, they should marry each other. They have the right to marry each other.
Okay, thank you. This side. Anybody want to speak? You're over.
Well, I think that I'm Marie
please?
Stella from
Okay.
Chesterfield. I believe that we should support gay marriage. I believe everyone has a right to be happy, to be respected by the law, to have permission if they love each other and feel that they want to be married. They should have the right to bind themselves to each other by law and by religion. And there are plenty of churches that will marry gay couples. They don't have to worry about your church not wanting to marry them because there's plenty of churches that will marry people. We have to stop the hate that's going on, and we have to be more open to each other and give people the opportunity to bind together, and that's what will give children a healthy perspective on life. And I want to point out something that nobody talks about. I was hoping the chefs and the breweries would be here to say that gay marriage will be a great economic boom to Richmond, to Chesterfield, to all our communities, and I hope we do this very soon. Thank you.
Sure. Floyd, on your side? Okay. Then we'll go in the middle.
Randolph Bell from Richmond. Just an observation. I've spent a lot of my career in diplomacy and in areas working with internationally recognized human rights with First Amendment rights here in the United States as well. People sometimes misconstrue rights as being something eternal. In fact, rights are a moving spot. For example, the entire Bill of Rights of the United States did not apply to the states at all, generally speaking, until the 1940s. So if you were to argue First Amendment rights in the United States in the courts before that era, you would have been addressing federal law alone. But there was an extension of that entire doctrine of rights. The other observation I'd make is those rights which are universally recognized internationally and accorded the status of universal rights also is a moving spot. If you go back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1947, you come away with a far less complete set of those rights than you would after the passage of various other international instruments going forward to this point. In consequence of that, the rights that are discussed in the debate about gay marriage have become part of that moving spot, and I would simply note that internationally and domestically the spot has moved a long way. It hasn't moved at one particular time, but it has moved, and it is almost certain to continue moving further. And in consequence, if you adopt the proposition, which our Constitution does, that civil governments shall have no say with regard to what may be inside this mind, this conscience, this set of religious beliefs, if it comes to that, and that the church and the state shall be divided by a wall, then you have to accord greater respect to the movement of the spot than you do to questions of what should be the moral basis of law. Thank you.
Ambassador Bell, if you don't have the answer to this question, I understand, but given your international perspective, is the debate in the United States different than what you've seen overseas in different countries, or is it?
It can be because of the difference of our own legal and constitutional framework. In the United Kingdom, for instance, there was a different debate because there's an established church. And the circumstances, rights, privileges, legal obligations of the Church of England were part of the debate in a way which since 1785 in Virginia, when the church was disestablished, it would not be the case here. In some countries, as in France, the civil law has preordained the extension of rights, but there's a very broad and deep Catholic culture that resulted in very large demonstrations in the streets when the question arose, which didn't happen here.
Okay, good. Great. Appreciate the perspective. We'll go in the middle of the room. Somebody wants to speak? Go back here. And we're trying to get people who haven't, and what makes the conversation even richer if you, like the woman who said she didn't hear the comment and gave a different viewpoint. If you have something different, fine. If you want to, but it's okay to expound on what somebody else said as well. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Roland Winston, and it's important to pay attention to organizations when organizations are in the conversation and people speak up and say, I represent so-and-so. But it's important to look behind that, and I appreciate today Mr. Blake speaking for himself. He led a press conference at the General Assembly the other day as the leader of an organization. I immediately checked out the 990, and it looks like most of the money the organization got was his fee for the year. So I don't know how many people he actually represents. I want to sort of respond to something the minister said and speak to this man that spoke first over here. I'm going to personally relieve you of being a hater. I just recently sort of decided I don't feel like people that oppose same-sex marriage are haters. They're coming from a place of fear. And if they're not coming from a place of fear, it's the sales pitch that they make. And so this man talked about what happens to my grandchildren. And the minister said, I wouldn't want to see my children raised with just my wife or just by me. And what about my church? And what about my caterer friends? This is going to hurt and affect me. Well, it's not going to affect you at all. Someone else's marriage doesn't affect you. And I'm really disturbed when people talk about, what if we have same-sex marriage? Well, we have same-sex marriage. If you haven't read the newspaper, it's all across the country. About 40% of the country now lives, population-wise, lives where same-sex marriage is legal, civil unions are legal. So if you don't know what's going on in those places, I guess you don't know what's going to happen when it comes here. But if you read the paper, it's already here. I have friends that are leaving the state, even as this conversation goes on and we're in court. They're moving out of the state because one partner can't put the other one on their health insurance. They just can't cover themselves. And so we have people that used to live in Richmond that have moved to D.C., but they come home and visit. We have people that live in Baltimore or Washington, D.C., that travel here on vacation. Same-sex marriage is in Virginia, and it's in Richmond. I have a bit of an issue with the way that the title is put up today. Should Virginia reconsider it? Because we're going to have same-sex marriage by court order, I'm pretty sure, one way or the other. And so I also expect we may still have a constitutional amendment on the books in 10 years. Look how long it took to get sodomy off the books after it became illegal.
Yeah, good point. And one of the things we do on the square, if you single somebody out, I feel obligated as a moderator to go to that person for somewhat of a rebuttal. So I'm going to ask anybody who's been singled out, if you want to say anything.
Anyone who ever has known me or does know me, the last thing that I would struggle with is fear. I'm a moral leader. I have wisdom and concerns. I don't have fear. I don't live my life according to fear. But I have genuine concerns that are valid, even as my libertarian friend maybe thinks other marriages are okay. I wouldn't feel the same way about that. I do think it's important, just to clarify, in Old Testament law, there is ceremonial law, judicial law, and moral law. Christians do not acknowledge Jewish ceremonial law or anything having to do with Israel's judicial laws. We only acknowledge moral law. So all these things that are talked about, well, it also says this and it also says that, that has no application for Christians.
Okay, good. Floyd, anybody on this side? Yes. This gentleman with his hand in the back, too.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it just takes a couple minutes. Keep talking.
I'm Guy Kinman, and I was for about 20 years an ordained Presbyterian minister. I was a chaplain during the Korean conflict, but not a hero. I wasn't in Korea. After 10 years marriage to a very lovely woman, I determined that my basic attraction was to finding the right man, and so I did the right thing and got divorced. I'd like to address how we've got into the position we are right now. The gentleman near me asked when they began to think homosexuality was legal. There's been a change across the country and in Virginia. 20 years ago, it was abhorrent, and the word gay was a bad word. And then, surprisingly, it's changing. People across the country are discovering something. Now, let's ask what that is. The change in people's acceptance of the brotherhood and the fatherhood and the sisterhood of all people is because they begin looking at us. No, I won't say that you were afraid, but I would say you were looking askance at us. And so over time, people have discovered that we are human beings, and we are redefining what it means by homosexual and homosexuality. Homosexuality is a condition of having at an early age discovered that you had a basic attraction to someone of your same gender or opposite. It is the same to a gay person that when they are attracted to somebody, when they push aside the strength of sex, they realize they're wanting a long journey, like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn going down the river, the Mississippi, all their lives, their fantasy. So it is not a same-sex marriage. It is a same-gender marriage. It is not a sexual attraction. It's attraction to the humanity of the people. The marriages I know to this day are, if anything, pardon, I shouldn't say this, but they are superior to the marriages of men who marry women and women who marry men. Oh, they are. If you know a couple that fought for years to get married, when other people look askance at marriage, there's a time when you should not look down on these people who like to live the rest of their lives together.
Thank you. Appreciate that. On this side, well, we're going to try to get people who have not had a chance to talk. Oh, okay. I'll get your rebuttal afterwards.
I just want to point out that the United States is supposed to be...
Please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Jean. I live in the city of Richmond. You know, the United States, we are supposed to be the beacon of light for the world, for democracy, and for human rights. And how can we say that we're that when right here in our own state, we are denying basic human rights to our citizens? I think it's appalling. It's disgraceful. We're on the wrong side of history on this. And I, for one, believe in freedom of religion, but I also believe in being free from your religion.
Okay, thank you. Are you calling for a rebuttal?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. You spoke about fear. I believe that the analogy which is often presented that we had a ban on the marriage between black people and white people is somewhat similar to the ban that we have on the same-sex people. I think it's a false analogy. And the simple reason is that there is no difference between black people and white people. It's no different than being tall people and short people. But there is an immense difference between men and women. And so this movement to have men marrying men and women marrying men, women marrying women, is another movement down a very dangerous place for our society in which we are erasing the distinction between men and women at our own peril. Sexual suicide. Urge caution.
Okay. Floyd, anybody on your side? Okay, good. Sir? Yeah, Floyd has a mic behind you. Welcome.
How you doing? I'm James Vince. I live out in Chesterfield County. You know, it's just so wonderful to be here today. You know, Everybody has been built with the choice to choose free will. If we look at the history and look at what's coming down, this, I hate to be the bearer of good news, but this is the way society is going to end up. And we need to go beyond the laws and all the dictations, and we just need to really love who we are as human beings, because that's what's going to change the hearts of people. And we are strong, independent. We've all been built with opinions and choices, and when we're so connected to it and so tight on it, we don't want to get off of it, and it could possibly be wrong. We need to dig down deep and understand that as human beings, we all need to be loved unconditionally, regardless of what our religious or our rights are and our choices, because it's not about that sometimes. It's all about us that are in here, because, see, we are going to be living together in one place or another. So until we learn to get along and understand, overcoming fear is just another word to not really understand what is it that you haven't done homework or research on. To understand if she chooses to marry two women, if she's happy and she's got peace, let her exercise her free will to choose. Why not? Because anything outside of our personal circle is not really our responsibility. It's really her responsibility. If we choose to marry husband and wife, it's our responsibility. Anything beyond that, what we can't control, let God take care of it. And in this society, for some of us, we like to take care of it. But that's the choice that we have to choose. Let's exercise that and go beyond the rules and regulations and laws, and let's just get a chance to love and understand who we are as individuals and love them and honor their choice to choose on how to live in our society. Because we're all we got. We all were created and designed that way. Let's learn to love again. Take away the hate, supersede the love, and get along. Thank you.
Thank you. In the middle, anybody in the middle having a conversation? Okay, and then I'm going to go over on that side, Floyd.
Hi, I'm Jennifer from Henrico.
Yeah, there's a 2-second delay, so, hum a harmony beforehand and wait for the microphone.
I'm Jennifer from Henrico County. I have read an article on Google about the medical field has done a study of MRIs from lesbian women, and they have the same brain mass as heterosexual men. And they've also done an MRI between a gay man and a woman, and they have the same. So I think it's probably, and he was also talking about, you find that out when you're young. I'm also a lesbian, and I found that out when I was a young kid. I think I was born that way. I know it was. And, if you're gay, you're not going to turn straight. And if you're straight, you're not going to turn gay. It's not going to turn people, it's just a fear, I guess. That's all I got.
Okay, thanks. Floyd? Yes. You pick Floyd. You're in charge of the mic. Good luck on that.
Hi, I'm James Parrish. I want to make a reference to a comment made earlier about how there's a lot more difference between men and women than black people and white people. I'm confident, I was not alive at the time, but if we go back and look at the arguments used against interracial marriage, I'm sure there's many, many leaders of this very state who are defining that there are very strong differences between the races, the same things. So I'm not sure where that argument stands. I think on the question of morality, things are fluid, like people said, but I know from the work that I do, if you meet the gay and lesbian families that I work with every day and the families that they're raising, the children they're raising, and you really get to know them and understand their lives, then there is no fear about marriage between same-gender couples. There is no fear about same-gender couples raising children, because you'll see they're just like every other American, just like every other Virginian. They went to work, pay taxes, raise families, have security, and love and marry the person that they love here in the place that they call home.
Thanks. Floyd, why don't you pick up somebody else who had their hand up? Okay. Again, we're trying to get people who have not had a chance to speak first.
Okay. My name is Serena Fazildin, and recently, I can say maybe 2-3 months, I received phone call from my family in Africa, and they informed me that so-and-so classmate was beaten to death being a lesbian, or so-and-so person was killed, sent to jail, and died over there because he was gay. I'm so proud to be in Virginia because we all can live together without knowing that our gay or lesbian friends or neighbor are going to be beaten to be who they want to be. I would really encourage for us to support our gay and lesbian friends, neighbor, and family to go ahead and marry whom they want, because we are America. When I was a child looking at America, I saw America as a country where they love everyone. And by us letting them marry whom they want, it's not anything to do with religion, because we have people from different religions, so we cannot push our own religion into them. So I really encourage us, Virginia, to support the same marriage. Let be a good example for the southern states. Thank you.
Thank you. We have about 7 minutes left. Josh, with great trepidation, I give you the microphone.
Second delay from the halls of Montezuma. I got that.
Good.
I'm John Schenholzer, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorders, and for me that means I've been clean and sober a little over 31 years. I'm really here for the next episode of the public square. However, I can't tell you what we're doing to our gay and lesbian citizens by even the shame that we as a society put on these kids is almost, I can't even find a word for it that I can say in public. Gay been around since man first walked the earth, period. The Greeks, the Romans, if you know your history, wide open society. Somewhere along the line, somebody thought it was immoral, and they wrote it in a book, and they killed people for it. It's almost crazy the way we're carrying on in 2014 with this. I've listened to people share, and I'm thinking, you're right. Why does one person's belief have to be somebody's law? People are born gay. They don't have a choice. Why are we impeding people's right to be and pursue happiness? Our Constitution guarantees us these laws. And then I was thinking before you said it, my God, we could be the go-to capital of America for weddings and receptions. Seriously. I believe in the right to work. If you don't want my business, go somewhere where they do want it. So, but this, to continue perpetuate shaming our citizens for being something that they should be proud of and happy to be, is insane on our society, and that needs to stop. And I hope to be part of that movement to stop that. So, thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Floyd, and next. Yeah, just somebody we haven't heard from.
Thank you. I'm Jim. I live in the city, and I'm gay married, and I'm really looking forward to when I'm simply married. Right now, my marriage is defined by where I stand geographically. If I go to Washington, where I got married, I'm married. When I come back to my home in Richmond, some people say I'm not married. I don't know if I go to a national park in Virginia, maybe I'm married. I don't know. But trying to make a distinction between all homosexuals and the way they conduct themselves and all straight people and how they conduct themselves, that can't be anything but ignorance or prejudice. Because when you say things like all straight people are immediately better parents than any gay people, you are setting aside all the individual differences that we find in all of us. And that's our individual differences are the most important things to recognize in each other. I wanted to propose an answer to when gay and lesbian relationships became moral in Virginia. And I think it must have been about the time in the run-up to the proposed amendment, because I think that's when the people that organized the amendment got worried. They said, look, it's changing. People are discovering that these are fine people who deserve equal treatment under the law. And soon, we're not going to have a majority anymore. So we've got to make this so hard that when the majority changes, the majority won't be able to undo it. It's going to be really complicated and difficult to do that. I've heard today some people have said, okay, we can't have same-sex marriage. Let them have civil unions or something. Well, we've kind of glossed over it, but that same amendment to our Constitution swung a wide blade and took care of that. It did three things, I think. It said there will be no same-sex marriage in Virginia. There will be no civil union in Virginia. There will be no recognition of any of these things, and we are not going to allow any legal arrangements that purport to convey the benefits of marriage to this segment of the population. And I guess the two things I just want to wrap up with is anyone's granddaughters, you don't know if your granddaughter is going to be gay or straight, and it's going to be much easier for her, if she is a lesbian, to see healthy lesbian relationships modeled. And I've probably forgotten the other thing I was going to say.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Over here.
Hi, my name is Celie, and I'm from Mechanicsville, and I got here a little bit late, so I apologize if you've already covered this, but I just wanted to say I agree with everything I've heard since I got here. I used to be an elementary school counselor, and I can tell you from experience that children don't choose their orientation. You know in kindergarten a lot of times how people are oriented, and it's a range. It's not gay or straight. It's a wide range. But and as a Christian who observes all the heinous things people are doing to each other all over the world, I really have a hard time believing that our Creator is wringing his hands and condemning people for loving each other. But that being said, what I don't know if you covered is we're also a nation governed by laws and not by people, and that's a good thing. And there are processes in place to change the laws. And I just feel really strongly, I agree with, I don't care who marries who. They love each other. I think it's great. But I think it's a dangerous, slippery slope if somebody can just suddenly get elected into office and decide which laws they're going to support and which ones they're not. I think that a better solution would be to change the law and get rid of the thing that's banning same-sex marriage and do it appropriately, because I think we're setting a dangerous precedent if whoever's in office can just change the law whenever they feel like it. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Got time for a couple more comments as the hour closes. I'll go to somebody who's already had a chance to speak if there is somebody here who has not had a chance. Unless you feel you need a rebuttal. I'm sensitive to that. Do you need a rebuttal? Oh, now you're negotiating. Okay,
hi, I'm Gary Williams. I'm new to Virginia, 4 years now.
Where'd you come from?
I grew up in Maine.
Get back to me in 40 years.
Yes. And what I'd like to say to you is this. I think we're all too vulnerable to somebody's prediction about what's going to happen if we do this. All of a sudden, there's a mountain of information about the calamity that's going to occur if we do this. I'd like to shift that to how about if we go into our own thinking, go into our own hearts, go into our own experiences to determine what we think about a given issue. I've been the principal of 3 different high schools, 42 years in secondary education. I've worked with gay faculty. They were no different from any other faculty member who I worked with in terms of their level of commitment, competence, safety of their students, whatever else you would say about predicting that, oh my goodness, what if we have gay faculty members, they're going to abuse our kids. That's not what happened. I've had same-sex parents. Those kids have performed in my schools. no differently from any of the other children because they had loving, supportive parents. Thank you.
Okay. We're at the hour mark. Marcus, where are you? Based on what you heard today over the hour, does it fit what you've been covering, or did you hear something different?
No, it's a lot of, I mean, these were some very interesting points I've heard. Some of them I haven't heard previously, but it boils down to the same argument. It's usually a question of morality and of, in a lot of cases, religion.
Okay. Yeah. All right, good. Listen, this is an important topic. It's a passionate topic. It's an emotional topic. It's a topic of law. It's a topic of society. It's the topic of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I want to compliment you all for helping us prove that Richmond can have a civil conversation on an issue of importance. Thank you very much. This is round 3 of the 5-part public square. Next up at 3 o'clock, how can Virginia improve mental health coverage? Thank you.